Hey, hello there. Welcome to another video on scoping model in C++. In this video, we are going to discuss about the global scope in C++. Now, in the previous video, we have discussed about various scopes that are available in C++, and as a programmer, we should always care about the scope, because depending on the scope or in which scope you are declaring your variable, its visibility will change. Okay, so in this video we are specifically going to discuss about the global scope. So let's get started. You can see on my screen I have a simple code that we have discussed in the previous video as well. So here we have two functions. First is our main function and another function is foo function. Okay, and the interesting part is we have a variable which is not written inside a function, it is written outside of these two functions, and this variable is called as global variable. So what kind of variables are called as global variable? So whenever any variable is declared outside of the function, then it is called as global variable. Okay, so in this case this global, its name itself is global, so this variable is a global variable. Now global variable doesn't need to have global name, or it just for the example, okay, it can be any name. So let's say ABC, so this ABC is a global variable. Okay, cool. Now why global variables are important, or why we should make our variables as global variable, or in which scenarios we should make our variables as global variable. So let me quickly tell you, the global variables has visibility inside all the functions. All the functions that you will declare in this file will have visibility to this global variable. See, in this case we have two functions, one is main and another one is foo. So both the functions will have visibility or access to this global variable. Okay, so here let's see what we have done. In foo I have printed global variable, okay, or value of the global variable. So here we can access this global variable. Similarly in main, what I am doing is I am assigning new value to the global variable, and that is allowed in C++ because global variables can be accessed by any function. Okay, so what we have learned so far, the global variable, as its name suggests, can be accessed by any function in C++. Okay, any function in that particular file in which it is declared. So if I run this code, let's quickly do that. Let's write g++ followed by 01 global.cpp, and okay, it is getting compiled. Cool, and let's execute its executable file. You will see that it is printing 5 followed by 10. Now why it is printing 5 followed by 10? Initially the value of global was 5. Okay, so initially when we called foo function from main, the value of global was 5, and that's why it printed 5. Then what we did global is equal to 10. Okay, so this global was assigned with new value, that is 10. So this global now contains value as 10. So when next time I am calling foo function from main, it is printing 10. Okay, so that basically means any function can access this global variable. Okay, so as a programmer, when we should use global variable? So whenever you have to share some data between multiple functions, then in that case you should use global variable. Let me quickly repeat my statement. Whenever you have to share some data between multiple functions, in that case you can make use of global variable. So it can be any scenario. Let's say you have a scenario where you have to count how many number of times some functions are getting called, or how many number of time different functions in your program are getting called. Okay, so in that case maybe we can do something like this. We can create a global variable with name counter. We can initialize that variable with value 0. Now when anytime any function gets called, that function will increment the counter by 1. Okay, so let's say you have 10 functions, so in each and every function we will increment the counter by 1. So whenever these functions will get called at any instance, they will increment the counter by 1, and maybe at the end of your main function we can display the value of the counter, by which we will get to know how many times these different functions in our program have got called. Okay, so let's quickly code this. Let's quickly write a code for this. Let's say I have a function foo, then let's say I have a function, let's say, let's remove this. Okay, let me copy this. Let's say I have another function that is bar. Okay, let's say I have these two functions. Cool. Now I want to count how many number of times the functions or different functions are getting called. Okay, so for that, let me just create a variable called as counter. Let me initialize it with value 0. Every time a function gets called, I will increment the counter by 1. Alright. Now let me just remove this line. Let me write foo is called, and here let's write bar is called. Okay, and let's say I'm right now calling foo, then I'm calling foo again, then I'm calling, let's say, bar. Let's say I'm again calling bar. Let's say I'm again calling foo, and let's say our program is dynamic. Okay, so there's some logic based on which the functions are getting called. So here what I have done, I have called them directly. Okay, but let's say there is some logic, there's some loop, and in that loop, if some condition is true, then only the function is getting called. Okay, so let's consider such kind of scenario. So in such scenario, we want to know how many times the functions got called other than main function. So whatever functions we have other than main function, we want to count number of times they got called. Okay, so now in counter we will have a counter, updated counter, and that will contain value of how many times the other function, that is foo and bar, have got called. So let's print it over here. So let me write cout foo and bar got called counter time. Okay, and let's quickly compile it. Okay, so now you can see first foo is getting called, then again foo is getting called, then bar and bar is getting called, and again foo and foo is getting called. Okay, so if you count these statements, it is 1 2 3 4 5. So the functions are getting called 5 times, and you can see that we are getting output as foo and bar got called 5 times. Okay, so what we are doing basically is we are actually using a variable. It is a global variable, and as it is a global variable, its rule says that it can be accessed by any function. Okay, so as it can be accessed by any function, that means we can use it as a shared variable, and that's the reason we have declared count over here, and all three functions have access to the counter variable. So whenever you have to store some data, and whenever you want to have access to that data in multiple functions, in that case it makes sense to make a global variable or to create a global variable. But as a programmer, you should always think twice while declaring global variables. Okay, because global variables are dangerous. Why they are dangerous? Let's say you want foo and bar to share some data, and that's the reason you created a global variable. Now what is the intention behind creating this global variable? Because you want, this is an example, okay, you want foo and bar to have some shared data, or to have some shared variable by which they will both use that variable. But now what is happening? The main is also getting access to this variable, but we don't have any intention of giving access to this variable to main function. But still, as it is a global function, or not global function, as it is a global variable, the main function will also have access to this variable. Okay, so what is happening? Whenever you declare any variable as global, all the functions will get access. Let's say you have 10 functions and you want only 2 functions to actually work on that global variable, but rest 8 functions will also by default get access to that variable, that global variable. And if by mistake, if any programmer who is developing a function from those 8 functions which are remaining, if they by mistake make use of this global variable, or by mistake they change the value of global variable, then your program will be in trouble. Okay, or you will be in trouble. That's the reason you should avoid using global variables. If there is no other way, if you have compulsory, you have to use it, then in that case you can use it. Otherwise you can avoid using global variables. Okay, Instead of that, you can pass the variables while calling a function as an argument and then make use of it and return some value from the function. So you can do something like that, but avoid use of global variables. So I hope you have understood what are the global variables. So let me quickly revise. Global variables are the variables which are declared outside of all the functions. Then we have discussed about when we should use global variables. So whenever we have to share some data between multiple functions, in that case we can use global variables. And the third thing that we discuss is we should avoid use of global variables. Okay, so that's it for this video. In the next video we are going to discuss about the local and block scope. So see you in the next video.